Is my head a slim play? I just will say to you, look, Bitcoin's clearly on like an uptrend here. I mean, you look at it any way you want, Bitcoin's on an uptrend. And now we've had a slight little uptick in Bitcoin. And the reason why we've had this uptick is because of this whole U.S. debt ceiling crisis. People thought that we were maybe going to reach a agreement between the Dems and the Republicans. Doesn't look likely anymore. In fact, if I look at, I have these very fancy buttons now in the studio. This is the last communication that I've got. Republican debt ceiling negotiator representative Graves says Republicans, White House still far apart on the debt ceiling after Monday night talks, but they are meeting again at 11 a.m. to continue the talks. We're going to talk about this debt ceiling. We're going to talk about what it means. We're going to talk about whether you should be worried and whether you should be more in Bitcoin or more in US dollars if you think that the US is going to default. Also a big story today around Binance. There is a lot more, I don't know if you're going to call it FUD, because this actually sounds like it is pretty serious, but it says that Binance actually commingled customer funds in the USA, and this has been broken by Reuters, so we're going to talk about that. Then we're also going to talk about 3 narratives that may actually be pumping this crypto market. So I know it doesn't feel like we're in a pumpy market, but there are 3 narratives that may actually pump this market. So listen, I'm back from Miami. I'm ready to bring you guys a big alpha pack show. It's going to be a high alpha per minute show. Now, I promised you guys that I wouldn't play the Get Out of Bed Bitch Go song because it's time, it's finished. I think we've done that. But I did meet someone very interesting in Miami. She's lovely. And I promised her that I would play her a special song today. So, Paulina, this is for you. All right, we've got lots to talk about today. I'm back from Miami, so please let everybody know that I'm back. You know how you let them know? You just comment below, you subscribe below, you like below, and the more love you give the show, the more people know that we're back from Miami. And I don't know if you guys really appreciate how hard we work when we go to these conferences and then we still bring you crypto love and we bring you crypto wisdom. It means waking up at like 5 o'clock in the morning to research the markets after you've gone out late the night before, got home drunk. You saw Sheldon. Sheldon did a show today. Now, I know that Sheldon only got to bed at about 3 o'clock in the morning. He was up at 5 to bring you guys a show at 6 a.m. If you guys don't appreciate that, then I really give up. Also, no. People are asking in the comments, no, we don't do requests for songs. It was done specifically for one very special person who I met this week, a big Banter fan who gave us a lot of great feedback. And so she said one of the feedback is that we need to get rid of the song. And we're getting rid of the song because we are moving more towards being a much more credible channel. That's the feedback that we've been getting. All right, listen, let's get into the alpha because there's so much to talk about today. We're going to go airdrop hunting for 3 big airdrops. We're going to address the Binance story and see whether it's FUD. We're going to talk about the debt default. We're going to talk about China and Hong Kong opening their trading on the 1st of June and what that can mean for coins. We're going to be talking about Apple and their event on the 5th of June. And then we're going to be talking about ETH staking. You see, there's a lot to talk about. Lots of Africa stuff. I see Binance bombshell. Wow, that's you guys have changed the background pretty quickly. You guys are very good like that. Very good like that. So listen, if you're here, let me know you're here. Stay present. See, everyone's saying she's wrong. Keep the song, guys. It's time. We have to change the song. If you want, you can send us a song. We need another song. So send us a song. And listen, I see there's only 229 likes. Smash that like button. Let's go. Let's take a look at the charts. First chart that I want to look at. Hey, what's going on here? Okay, so we're not doing requests now. All right, so let's look at the charts. First of all, let me get rid of this download bar. We do have Bitcoin, 27,300. It is in the uptrend. I think soon this little head and shoulders pattern needs to be invalidated. So one way or another, this head and shoulders has to be playing out. You do also have a slight uptick on ETH Bitcoin. I think I know what the reason for this ETH Bitcoin uptick is. And then look at our beautiful Banter bubbles. We've changed them. You can see that they're much more relaxing now, that they don't wobble as much. We're really coming a long way with these banter bubbles. So you can see if we look at the banter bubbles, there are certain narratives that are doing well today and certain narratives not doing well today. The narratives that are doing well today, pay attention. Conflux and Kava. This is related to Asia. We're going to talk about Asia. Render. We've got to take credit for calling Render when we call Render. We call Render for you guys like $1.70. You can see there's lots of chats here in the bubbles about why Render is moving. You could probably get all the alpha in the bubbles yourself. Bad day for Pulse and Pulse X people. I don't actually know why, but maybe the chat is actually in the bubbles. So yesterday they were all very good. In fact, yesterday I almost went and bought some more Pulse. I do own Pulse because I got some Pulse with the Pulse airdrop, don't forget. Also not a great day for Hex, also down 8%. Also, I'm sure if we look in the bubbles, we'll find out why it is down 8%. Yeah, all blue, this is from Crypto1333, says all blue chip cryptos have high and low tide. Hex is having a low tide now. I think you're wrong. I think this is about the fact that if you burnt your Hex, you got double the Hex on the Pulse chain. Freddy, that's how it works. Eh? Like you burn your Hex, you get double your Hex on Pulse chain.
If you sacrifice the Hex, you get a multiplier.
Yeah, you see. So yeah. So listen, yeah, give Banter Bubble some love. I mean, this is a tool that we built for you guys, so that we could, as a community, gather and talk about why bubbles are moving up and why bubbles are moving down. Like if you click on Conflux, you should know that there's a big Asian narrative going on. And if you have been reading the comments here, you'd know that. And yeah, so I think give us some love here at banterbubbles.com. The app, the Apple app will be launched sometime this week. The Google app will be launched sometime this week. Lots happening. Anyway, let's get into more of the show stuff. So first of all, I'm back from the Bitcoin conference. And you know, whenever I go to a Bitcoin conference, and specifically Bitcoin Miami or Bitcoin 2023 or 2022 or whatever it is, I always come back and I always question my resolve on altcoins, because they do such a good job at the Bitcoin conference to convince you that Bitcoin is the king and that nothing else actually matters. Now, this year it's slightly different because usually, you know, even if I go to the Bitcoin event, I always come back and I'm always still bullish on altcoins. But, you know, now with smart contracts on Bitcoin and with ordinals on Bitcoin, you've got to start really questioning the thesis as to which altcoins are going to exist in the long run and which altcoins aren't going to exist in the long run. Obviously, we could ride hype narratives, and we will ride hype narratives because that is part of what any investing cycle is about. But much more important than riding hype narratives is identifying who's going to be the king in the future, who's going to be the queen, the princess, and all the different ones. And that's really what we're going to try and get through here today. The Bitcoin conference this year was very, 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 very different. It was very good, but it was heated. I want to show you some of the things that actually happened in the Bitcoin conference. One of the highlights.
The reason that I got into Bitcoin was because it used to be the intellectual center of the world, basically.
You said that.
That is no longer the case. The intellectual conversations that I've been seeing at this conference for years now, have been so subpar that I don't feel confident that you guys even have the first clue how to do MEV mitigation strategies.
But there have been ethical conversations here, and you could argue that there haven't been ethical conversations at the other conferences.
I think, you know, so people are saying Bitcoin is supposed to be safe against nation-state attacks. If they aren't even safe against me and Udi fucking around, then what the fuck is the purpose of this entire fucking conference or this entire project?
So there was a lot of debates around ordinals and whether ordinals are an attack on Bitcoin and whether this is a good discussion on Bitcoin. And to be honest, I broke down all my thoughts about it, and we're going to be dropping a full 1 hour long video about the whole war between ordinals and non-ordinals people and a whole recap of the Bitcoin 2023 conference. We're going to be dropping that over Miles the slot, which is at what time? I have no idea. What time is Miles the slot? Anyone?
1 a.m.
Huh?
1 a.m.
Which means that it is 7 p.m. EST. So look out for our video at 7 p.m. EST. Listen, it got heated. I won't lie to you. It got really, really, really heated. I'm going to play this, even though I know that it's going to get us banned from YouTube. Doesn't matter. We love you guys. We'll get banned. You need to help us unban by just hitting like.
Go, man.
Fuck
Thank
you
you.
guys! You're fucking not doing the work! God fucking damn it, that Bitcoin magazine was a fucking farce! 2 fucking idiot wizards on stage? This is not a fucking joke, people! Fucking idiots, okay? Our fucking children are at risk. And we got these two fucking clowns on stage. Fuck you, Bitcoin Magazine. You fucking dropped the ball. Do the work. This is not a coin. Go fucking Bitcoin and fuck you, 𝗬𝗓𝗐. You're a fucking loser.
It's the breaking Bitcoin song.
I mean, on the one hand, you got to like ask yourself, like, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar asset, an asset which we think is going to redefine money, and then this is the kind of shit that you get at the biggest conference talking about the asset. You get people dressed up as taproot wizards and people fighting them. So I don't know. Anyway, full coverage later today. One of the best videos I've ever made, I'll tell you that much. Very excited. I was actually going to drop it here instead of this, but then I thought I prefer to sit here and do a live with you guys because I think it's just more fun. I've been gone for a while. Nice to do a live with you guys. I did miss a show yesterday because I was flying. I missed a show on Friday because I was drunk. Not drunk, I was hungover. It's a big difference. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about... let's go straight into the debt ceiling, or the U.S. debt ceiling crisis. As you know, the U.S. is hitting its debt ceiling. And when the US hits its debt ceiling, it effectively means that the US cannot take on any more debt to spend. And it seems like... Hold on, where is this music coming from? Let me just switch this off. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Okay, so it seems like that something has to happen within 9 days. It seems like something has to happen by the 1st of June. If it doesn't happen by the 1st of June, then there's a big problem. The US could actually default on its debt repayments. And we don't want the US defaulting on its debt repayments, because if it does, well, a lot of things could happen. You've got to ask yourself a question. If you really believe that the US is going to default on its debt repayments, where do you want to be? Now, even though I don't believe that this is going to happen, I believe that no one wants the US to default on its debt, not the Democrats, not the Republicans. What I think is currently happening is that there is a game of chicken being played between the Dems and the Republicans. It's like, you know, the game of chicken where you drive your cars towards each other and then the first one to move is the chicken, right? So I think that's what's happening. And I think in this game of chicken, because remember, it's a combination of a game of chicken plus a marketing campaign. So it's like, if you think about this, you got the Dems and the Republicans, and they're going to negotiate until the very last minute. But they're not going to let the US default on its debt. But until the very last minute, what they're going to do is they're going to negotiate, and they're going to try and squeeze the juice out of one another, holding each other to hostage. And right now, as it stands, the Republicans have an advantage over the Democrats. The reason why the Republicans have an advantage over the Democrats is because we're in a Biden presidency. And if we do default, and we're not going to default, but if we do default, if the US do default, then the legacy that Joe Biden will have forever is that the US has never, ever, ever defaulted on its debt until they got to the Biden presidency. Because no one's going to remember Kevin McCarthy. No one's going to remember the rest of the Republicans. They're going to remember that during the Biden presidency, there was a US debt default. Now, I don't think there's going to be a debt default. But I think that what's happening now is they're turning up the marketing campaign. And you can see it. Yesterday, 50 US senators had been issued with satellite phones for emergency communication. What is that? It gets the world to start panicking, to start thinking, oh my goodness, we have to get resolution in the US, because if we don't get resolution in the US, there's going to be so many protests and violence, and the mobile phone networks aren't actually going to work. Where are they? Well, yesterday they met again. They thought they were going to get a deal, and again, there was no deal. Here are the comments from Kevin McCarthy, who's negotiating on behalf of the Republicans.
Welcome back. So we just came back from the White House. I thought the meeting was productive. I thought it was more productive than the other meetings we've had, but we still have differences. We left the meeting with directing the members and the staff to get back together, work through the night, knowing where some of our differences lie, see if there's other ideas of where we could work through. But I've been very clear ever since February 1st. I mean, here we are, June 1st being the deadline. This is not how government should work. This is not how the Republicans want it to work. We're going to let the teams work tonight, see if we could get progress, but we didn't. Productive but not progress.
Mr. Speaker,
here?
Well, I would assume I'd meet with President Biden every day till we get this done. This is too important.
Do you expect to meet with him tomorrow?
Look, if we don't meet, I'm sure we're going to talk on the phone. But we're going to have the staff get together, and then we're going to get back. It was not set that we had to see one another, or at least we're going to talk, but nothing's set there. And I sat with him on February 1st saying, let's work through this together. Let's find where we can find common ground, that we can curve the amount of spending, make our economy stronger, curve inflation, and make us less dependent upon China. But he told me for 97 days they wouldn't meet with us. That's really why we're where we are today.
You see, the marketing campaign is notching up.
¿Quieres crear tu propia página web profesional?
One party making the other party look bad in front of the US people, which is a very, very, very bad strategy. Anyway, the debt is ticking up. We're almost at the debt limit, which is, I think, $200 billion away from where we are today. The Republicans, all they want the Democrats to stop spending. They're saying, look, you guys are spending too much money. You cannot continue to spend. You cannot continue to kick the can down the road and drive up the debt. You can hear that in the communication previously.
You can't keep raising the debt ceiling. It's like having your child have a credit card, and year after year after year, you keep reaching the limit and you just keep expanding it. Well, there comes a point where your credit card now costs you more than all the money you make in a year, bigger than your entire economy. You're responsible for paying it, but shouldn't you actually look how you're spending money?
And it is actually getting very, very scary. Now, this is a chart of the US's interest payments. So this is the interest that the US is paying on its debt. So this is just a chart of interest. Look at where it started. It started in the 1970s where they were spending $34,644. And now look at where they're at today. Today they're spending over or nearly $1 trillion on interest. $1 trillion on interest on the US debt. This is a completely unsustainable problem. And the reason is because Washington keeps spending.
Normally we bring in 17% of our GDP. Right now we're bringing almost 20%. Do you know how many times in modern history that has ever happened? That much? Only 2 times. In 1944 and 2000. But if you look at how much this government is spending, on a 50-year average, we usually spend 21% of GDP. He's at 23.6 going to 25. It is not a revenue problem. It is a spending problem.
So they want the Democrats to stop spending. They want the Democrats to stop spending because if you look at the debt versus GDP of the country, you realize that the US ranks very, very, very highly in the debt versus GDP of the country. Anyway, today at 11 a.m., they will continue the talks. They have to finish this quickly. This is not something that they can continue to draw out. And the biggest reason why they have to finish this very, very quickly is because they're running out of money. If you look at the Treasury right now in their account has $68 billion. Can you imagine that they only have $68 billion in their account? They are about to run out of money. Now, what does this mean? It means that it's probably going to get resolved. And what's going to happen the minute that this gets resolved? The minute that this gets resolved, Treasury needs more money because they don't have any more money in their account. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to issue more T-bills so that they can continue to spend. They say they could issue up to $700 billion in T-bills so that they could continue to spend. Now you got to ask yourself a question. Where would you want to be if the US defaulted? I think that there's a very, very, very small chance that the US defaults, less than 1%. But let's just talk about the small chance that the US defaults. What happens if the US defaults? Where would you like your money to be? Got to ask yourself, would you like to be in US dollars? Or would you like to be in property? Would you like to be in gold? Would you like to be in Bitcoin? Let's ask ourselves that question to actually position ourselves for what could happen. And the best way to look at that is to say, well, what's happened in other countries when they've defaulted? What's happened to their currency? What's happened to the price of property? What's happened to the price of gold when they have defaulted? So I got this from ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT about all other countries that have defaulted, and it gave me a comprehensive list of the countries that have defaulted. Countries are Argentina, Greece, Russia, Ecuador, Zimbabwe, and I think there's one more. I think there were 6. What happened to all the currencies of these countries when they defaulted? What happened to the price of US dollars in their country? What happened to the price of property in their country? Well, we know that most of the currencies in the countries that defaulted went to zero. The Argentinian peso collapsed. The Greek currency collapsed. The Zimbabwe currency collapsed and almost doesn't exist. The Russian ruble, I think if you look historically at where the Russian ruble is, you'll know exactly what happened. And so I think that you got to ask yourself a big question. And again, I don't believe that the US is going to default, but if you do believe that the US is going to default, where would you like to have your money? You can have it in US dollars. Probably not the best place to be, because if the US defaults, people aren't going to want US dollars. You can have it in gold, but where is your gold going to be stored? In a central bank? Or where are you going to store your gold? And so I think that, as much as I hate saying it, I think that if the US defaults, probably the safest place in the world is Bitcoin. Now, that would be great for the Bitcoin price. But I think there would be a lot of other implications which would be very, very, very bad. It's very similar to 𝗵𝗫𝗪's thesis, where he said that Bitcoin was going to go to $1 million because we were going to go into a period of hyperinflation. And the reality is that if we did go into a period of hyperinflation, Bitcoin would go to $1 million. But all the things that would have happened around it kind of would have made it not worth our while to want Bitcoin to get those numbers. So it's kind of like saying, look, if I were in the US and I were really worried about a default, I think I would want to be in Bitcoin. I wouldn't want to be in gold, because gold can be confiscated and probably would be confiscated. Gold in any meaningful amount is probably held in a central bank or somewhere where the government has direct control over. And remember, when there are riots and when there are government defaults, as happened with all of these countries. I mean, I don't know if any of you were around when all of this happened, but when the collapse happened in places like Argentina or like Greece or like Zimbabwe, there were huge riots in the streets. There was total collapse. The banks were closed. You could not withdraw money using ATMs. It was an absolute disaster. Now, I know you think that it will be different in the US, but let me tell you, if you do get a debt default in the US, it's going to be the same thing over and over again. But again, as I say, I don't think there's going to be a debt default. I think this is a game of chicken. I think the game of chicken is combined with a very, very, very strong marketing campaign. So you have a game of chicken and a very, very strong marketing campaign. And I think that by the 1st of June, both parties want this to happen. And so they will make this happen. It'll just mean that there'll be more compromises on Wall Street. Anyway, so that is the debt default. There are one or two macro events that we should probably talk about this week. The biggest macro event this week, you got to ask yourself, Maxink says, where would you rather be? I would rather be in Bitcoin. If there is a debt default, I would rather be in Bitcoin, to be honest. From a macro point of view, one big event this week, and that actually happens on Friday. I don't really pay attention to Fed speakers. When Yellen speaks on Wednesday, and she is going to speak, she's going to talk about the debt default, and it's going to sound the same as all her other talks, warning us that if the parties can't agree, then you know how this is. Come on, I don't have to tell you. Let's stop being bored about it. We do have PCE this weekend, which is personal consumption expenditure. Now, that happens on Friday, which is the 26th of May. Last time, we had a 4.2 reading, the time before a 5% reading, the time before a 5.4% reading. Remember that this is a very important reading, because this is the reading that the Fed look at when they determine whether or not they're going to increase interest rates. This is the inflation reading. They don't look at CPI, they look at PCE. So the expectations are 3.9%, which if it came in at 3.9%, maybe we get a pump in the markets. I think we do get a pump in the markets. It is important to pay attention to this. Why? Because remember that there was no chance of an interest rate increase. Well, now there is a chance of an interest rate increase. In fact, there's a 30% chance of an interest rate increase. And if we had Fed's Bullard, now remember, I don't really pay much attention to Bullard, because I don't know how he got the name Bullard. His parents should have called him Bearard, because he's a bear. He never, ever, ever talks bullish. He's always like the bear. He came out this week and he said he still sees another interest rate hike. I also see one more interest rate hike. The market is calling for 3 interest rate decreases this year. Sorry, 2 interest rate decreases this year. I don't think we're getting 2 interest rate increases this year. I think the market is delusional. Let's wait for PCE. Let's watch PCE together on Friday, and then we'll make a call on Friday as to what we think. So Friday, that brings us to May 26th. So we have a few catalysts that could drive Bitcoin. 4 actually. One is this debt ceiling discussion. Good or bad? I think Bitcoin goes up. 2, PCE data on Friday. Good PCE data, markets start running, Bitcoin goes up, head and shoulders gets invalidated. Next narrative, which happens 5 days or 6 days after Friday, is the 1st of June. 1st of June is a big day for Bitcoin and a big day for crypto. Why? We've been talking about it for a while, but you know that Hong Kong is opening its country to cryptocurrency trading on the 1st of June. Now, we've been anticipating it for a while. We've been following the story for a while. I do know some channels have started to cover it now. We're not going to mention any names, but they are starting to cover it now. We've been telling you this for a long time, that Hong Kong is opening up their retail trading to investors. Now, it's not as smooth as we originally thought, because they are opening it up, but they are opening it up with a whole lot of restrictions. So it's important that we pay attention to these restrictions, because they may impact our decision. So yes, we're starting on the 1st of June. There is a press conference happening today, which is happening at in a couple of hours. A press conference about the opening up of all of this. Now, there are two options here. We could see the Chinese coins rallying after this, or it could be a buy the rumor, sell the news type of event, and that depends on the appetite of the Asian market when they open up to Hong Kong. Now, as I said, there are some restrictions. What are the restrictions? The first thing is, according to requirements of the Hong Kong government, the tokens purchased by retail investors need to be included in the 2 major indices, which is a minimum requirement. So the following tokens may be listed in the first batch of Hong Kong's compliance thing. So these are the tokens that will potentially pump if there is a Hong Kong pump. Look at this list. This is the list. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, Polkadot, Solana, Cardano, Avalanche, Polygon, Chainlink. These are the ones that are tradable because they form part of these kind of indices, okay? Now, there are some other restrictions. For one, there is no gifting of crypto in Hong Kong, which means no airdrops, nothing like that. Stable coins, you're not allowed to trade stable coins until a later date. So it says stable coins should not be admitted for retail trading until they are regulated. So I think you're gonna have to trade probably BTC and ETH pairs if you're trading in Hong Kong, which could actually create buying pressure for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So let's keep an eye open for Bitcoin and Ethereum, because that is one of the things that could happen. No gifts, no crypto gifts, no airdrops, none of that, which I think is great. We have a list here. We'll keep you updated on this list of the potential tokens that could be running with the Hong Kong narrative. We have a list. We'll keep you updated. On our list, one of them is Conflux. We'll give you this list. For now, you can't fade the Asian pump, and I'll show you a great example of why I think you can't trade the Asian pump. Because when the Asians ape into something, then there's no stronger force than the Asians aping into something. And what you can see here is like something that happened today. So 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which is the biggest Korean exchange, previously published a warning about 𝗂𝗏 and waves. And today, what they did is they lifted the warning on 𝗂𝗏 and waves. Now, let's go to the bubbles and just see what happened to 𝗂𝗏 today. 𝗂𝗏 at one point was up 30%. So let's quickly see. At one point, it went all the way to $1.12 after being at 102. Actually, no, it was lower. I remember seeing it way lower. Anyway, it pumped. Why did it pump? Because they just removed the warning. That's what happened. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the biggest exchange in Korea, or one of the biggest exchanges in Korea, just removed the warning, and that's pretty much what happened. And that drove the market up. Okay, so that takes us to 1st of June. So we got 26th of May. Then we got 1st of June. Then the next date that we're looking at for a big crypto rally narrative is the 5th of June. Remember, 5th of June is the Apple Developers Conference, Apple DevCon. We think that they're going to announce their virtual reality, or what they call their mixed reality headset. And that's going to open up the narrative for crypto gaming, for things like Render, which, by the way, we did call super, super early. You can see Render is absolutely cooking. We called it at $1.70, $1.80. It's at $2.65. I know a lot of you have traded in the competition. By the way, where am I in the competition? I think I'm getting wrecked because of my Sui Long. Minus 24%. I was in the top 80. It's just the Sui Long. If this Sui Long comes right for me, and I think it will in time, Sui made a mistake not doing an airdrop. That's the problem. And now no one cares about their token and they basically die in the graveyard. Anyway, we did also get some news today from STEPN. So STEPN integrate Apple Pay, and effectively what that means is that you can buy the STEPN sneakers using Apple Pay, which is, again, just showing you how amazing it is when you start opening things up for the Apple ecosystem. So I think there's going to be a lot more announcements, and I think the closer we get to the 5th of June, the more announcements there are going to be. Quickly in the bubbles, let's just quickly check what STEPN did. There we go, should be somewhere here. GMT up 6.2%. Blur, big announcement on Blur today. I actually saw the announcement. Opening it up to Binance in the US, I think, which is why it's actually gone up now. All right, let's carry on. Let's look at some other altcoin news. In fact, maybe before we get into other altcoin news, we should talk about the Binance FUD or not FUD. I don't know. You tell me. FUD, not FUD. So this is what I initially thought when I read the article that was published around Binance. There was an article published around Binance. It was published by Reuters. When I read the article, I thought to myself, this article just seems a bit ridiculous. It just doesn't sound right. And what they're saying is that crypto giant Binance commingled customer funds and customer revenue, which is what former insiders say. Now, why this is such a big story, if it's true, is that that's a breach of the US financial rules because it requires you to keep customer funds and company funds separately, right? That is what the rule is in the United States. And this former insider allegedly says that what they did was they ran this. But the way that this article is worded is it almost skirts the truth. Binance found no evidence that Binance client monies were lost or taken. So if you found no evidence, why are you reporting on the story? Okay. 𝗕𝗧𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗧 says that many crypto exchanges offering securities to US customers are not complying with the laws, blah, blah, blah. Their business models tend to be built on taking customer funds, commingling it. And that's why it's such a big thing. Anyway, so obviously Binance came out and said, this is garbage. This is what Binance came out and said. In fact, their head of comms, I think he's the head of comms. He says, I mean, just try and understand how much of a disservice to themselves the mainstream media are doing. The mainstream media seem to be their own worst enemy, just like BitBoy is his own worst enemy. It's like, like I said, that like mainstream media and BitBoy don't need enemies in the world because they have enough enemies in themselves. So they don't need enemies because they have enough enemies in themselves. They are their own worst enemies. So this is what the Binance PR guy, I'm going to follow the Binance guy. I'm not following Reuters because I just can't. I used to follow Reuters, but I unfollowed them because too much fake news. So he says, let me explain just how desperate a journalist at Reuters is to publish a negative story. The whole base of the story this morning is that when users purchase BUSD, Paxos BUSD, from Binance, they were taken to a transaction page that had the term deposit on it. Users were making a purchase of a stablecoin that was redeemable by Paxos, which was explicitly stated on this page. The story is so weak that they had to put up front Reuters found no evidence that Binance client monies were lost or taken in a transparent attempt to protect themselves from a lawsuit. Underneath that, they pinned 1,000 words of conspiracy theories, which we explained were false, with zero evidence other than former insider. We've been very public about where the company had regulatory shortcomings in the past. This is not one of them. There's no reason for he called Reuters a respected outlet, to continue making stuff like this. Also, the xenophobia behind consistently mentioning CZ Binance's ethnicity, without noting that he's a Canadian since the age of 12, is about as subtle as a hammer wrapped in a pillowcase. Okay, so obviously in this article, they must have called CZ a Chinaman, probably. They probably said he was Chinese. He's much more Canadian than he is Chinese. I know he looks Asian, but he's much more Canadian than he is Chinese. Anyway, so while the good news is that now, even when they are reporting these stories, the Bitcoin price doesn't even move. It's like the Bitcoin price doesn't actually really even care about the Binance fight anymore. Now, if you think about the beginning of this year, in the beginning of this year, we would, if we just heard the term Binance and Commingling, market would crash by $1,000. But now, like, the market's like so used to this attack by the mainstream media that they don't really care about Binance, and the market doesn't actually even move when this fight comes out. Cool, so that's that. Let's move our attention to other altcoins now. I mean, we have spoken a little bit about altcoins. We've got a lot of altcoins to talk about. Let's talk about a whole lot of the altcoins. I said to you the narratives that I think are popular today. Pulse and Pulse Chain having a bad day. I don't know why they're having such a bad day, because if I look at the stats, their stats are very good on Pulse. Like, if you look at the TVL on Pulse, $480 million or $477 million. Actually more TVL on Pulse than there is on Phantom and Solana. I mean, that is an achievement. Like it or not, and again, I'm a very small investor in Pulse, but that is an achievement. Also, OKX listed Pulse, or to list Pulse for spot trading. Pulse deposits will open 9 a.m. UTC on May 23rd. That's today. I think it must be trading now on OKX. Remember, if you want to sign up to OKX to trade Pulse, link below. There is a link below. Click on the link below. You can't win the Tesla because we're actually giving away the Tesla today. We need to give away a Tesla today. We will give away a Tesla today or tomorrow. I must just find out what needs to happen. Yeah, so big stuff happening on Pulse. We did speak about Render. We did speak about these narratives, the Conflux and the Neo narrative, which is the China narrative. There are some other narratives. In fact, let's talk about the next narrative, which is airdrops. So there is an airdrop that's happening, but I think you've missed it. I think if you want part of the layer 0 airdrop, I think the rumors are that layer 0, which is, remember, the protocol that Stargate uses, it's a cross-chain interchain protocol, which is one of the best, if not the best, cross-chain interchain protocols. That airdrop is apparently going to be happening pretty soon. We have just rumors happening that it's happening pretty soon. I think you've missed it. But if you have used Stargate, if you have bridged assets across to the subnets, if you have used some of the DeFi protocols, then maybe you could still get this airdrop. Maybe you could still get this airdrop. If not, don't stress, because there are two other airdrops that you can get pretty soon. One of them is ZK Sync, and another one is Starknet. So you've got to keep your eyes open for ZK Sync and Starknet. And what you can see is, as a result of this, people are going to ZK Sync and people are going to Starknet. Now, if what I'm saying to you sounds like Chinese, it's not because we're talking about the China narrative today. ZK Sync and Starknet are both ETH scaling solutions, like Arbitrum and like Optimism. So if you want to get there, you need to go and explore their ecosystems. And you can see that the total value locked and the people that are starting to trade in ZK Sync and in Starknet are actually starting to become really high because they think that there is an airdrop about to happen. So if you look at total active addresses, here we go. You can see starting to increase over here. And TVL, daily transactions starting to increase. Let's see if we can get TVL here. TVL also gradually on the increase. So let's just see if we can go with a longer time frame here. This is the last one. Okay, that should be good enough. So you can still get them. There are probably two accounts that I'd follow. Airdrop Official, one of the ones that I'd follow. I would also follow Mingo Airdrop because they'll tell you where to get those airdrops. Oh, what else? Okay, some more news. ETH staking spiked. Basically, people are locking up their ETH now. We thought people may withdraw their ETH. There are 0 validators in the queue to exit. More people want to stake than want to withdraw. So very, very, very bullish for ETH. In fact, there's a good chart here about ETH deposits versus ETH withdrawals. And you can see, other than in the beginning, when people were withdrawing because they could withdraw, now there's many more deposits than there are withdrawals. So that's good news. That's very, very, very good news. Other news. I like this story. FTX CEO John Ray confirms FTX 2.0 plan. So a couple of things you want to look out for here. They are reviewing bidders for the FTX 2.0. So they may actually start up the exchange again. I need to ask you a question. If they do start up the exchange again, would you put your money back onto FTX? If your answer to that question is yes, I'm asking you very nicely right now to please unsubscribe and just leave. because you shouldn't be listening to this channel. Please tell me you would not put your money back onto FTX. There's no reason to put your money onto FTX when there's such cool other exchanges. But the other thing that you should notice here is you should notice how everything that John Ray does is by the minute. So he charged $1,000 to finalize to review and finalize 2.0 reboot of exchange material for distribution. And he charged $650 to comment on the 2.0 bidder list. So they are talking about this. Let's see if it actually happens. What else? What else is there? Ben.eth, who created the Ben.eth token and the PsyOps token, he's now received 1,000 ETH from BitBoy for the purchase of the meme coin. True story. So it is happening. He's now sending it to exchanges and he's withdrawing the money on exchanges. We are following that money for you. You see he's launched PsyOp. I think that's it. Let's see if there's anything else. Is there anything else happening in the research group? Let me quickly call up the research group and see if there is anything else happening in the research group right now for us to look at. Otherwise, maybe some Q&A. If anybody has some Q&A, I am back. Big show dropping this later on today. You've got to see it. What is this? I see there's something going on here. Solana has just created a plugin for integrates OpenAI's ChatGPT into Solana network for the first of blockchains.